December 2025. It was supposed to be a month of celebration, families reuniting, holiday travel, the busiest time of the year for American aviation. But instead of joy, the aviation community has been met with a deafening silence. And then, impact. First, a cargo feeder in the Rockies fighting ice on the wings. Then, a commercial airliner sliding off a runway in the frozen Midwest. And finally, the shocking high-speed impact of Greg Biffle's Citation jet in the fog of North Carolina. 3 weeks. 3 disasters. 1 terrifying pattern. We have spent the last 4 videos dissecting the tragic crash of N257BW. We analyzed the controversial rough engine audio.
Faithful traffic, Citation 257 Bravo Whiskey. We've got an issue with some of our things. So please hold takeoff for runway 10. We're having some issues here. We're going to try to circle back around and land it, but it might be worse.
We explored the terrifying biology of the Somatogravic Illusion. We used forensic science to prove that the machine was fighting to save the pilots until the very end. But as we close this investigation, many of you have asked a bigger question, a harder question. Why? Why is this happening now? Why do experienced pilots, flying capable machines, seem to fall from the sky in clusters whenever the calendar hits December? Today, on the finale of our Greg Biffle series, we are zooming out. We are no longer just looking at one crash. We are looking at the deadly cluster. We will connect the dots between the ghostly fog in North Carolina and the ice storms of the Midwest. We will expose the invisible enemy called Get-There-Itis, a psychological trap that kills more pilots than engine failure ever could. And we will ask the uncomfortable question, is the American airspace system breaking under the pressure of the holidays? This is not just an accident investigation. This is a warning to every pilot and passenger in the sky. Welcome to the Air Debrief. To understand why Greg Biffle's crash is not an isolated event, we have to look at the triangle of tragedy that formed over the US skies this December. 3 crashes, 3 different causes. But they all share the same DNA. Corner 1, the illusion. This is the Greg Biffle crash. As we proved in our previous videos, this wasn't about a broken engine. It was about a broken perception. Flying into dark, misty conditions with high acceleration triggers the Somatogravic Illusion. The pilot feels a climb, but the reality is a dive. This is a psychological killer. It strikes when the pilot trusts his gut over his gauges. It is subtle, it is silent, and it is swift. Corner 2, the ice. Just days before the Statesville crash, we saw a near-fatal incident in the Rockies involving a cargo feeder. The pressure to deliver holiday packages on time is immense. A pilot, running late, decides to skip the second de-icing spray. It looks clean enough. He thinks, I can make it. But ice is a physical killer. Even a layer of frost as thick as medium grit sandpaper can reduce lift by 30% and increase drag by 40%. Unlike Biffle, who fought his mind, this pilot fought physics. And physics always wins. Corner 3, the slide. And then, the commercial runway excursion in the Midwest. A heavy jet, a contaminated runway, and a tailwind. The pilots wanted to get on the ground. They wanted to end the flight. They forced a landing that should have been a go-around. This is an environmental killer. When the friction coefficient goes to 0, the brakes become useless. The technology becomes irrelevant. Illusion, ice, friction. 3 different mechanisms of disaster. But if you look closer, there is a common thread pulling the trigger in all 3 cases. It wasn't the weather, it wasn't the machine, it was a decision made under the crushing weight of a calendar date. In aviation psychology, we have a name for this. We call it Get-There-Itis. It sounds like a joke, but it is a lethal condition. In December, the mission changes. It is no longer about flying the plane safely. It becomes about getting home for Christmas, delivering the gifts, making the family dinner. The destination becomes more important than the journey. And that is when safety margins get trimmed. Let's look at the Greg Biffle case again with this lens. Many of you, especially the pilots in the comments, have pointed out a critical detail, and Captain Steve raised this point as well. Why did they turn back to Statesville? Think about it. When they reported issues or a rough engine, they were only minutes away from Charlotte Douglas International, CLT. Charlotte has huge runways. It has ILS precision approaches. It has a massive array of emergency equipment waiting. Statesville is a small, uncontrolled field buried in fog, with darkness all around. So why turn back to the danger? Because Statesville was home base. Their car was parked at Statesville. Their plan ended at Statesville. In an emergency, the human brain craves familiarity. It acts on instinct, not logic. It seeks the path of least resistance regarding logistics, not the path of greatest safety regarding life. This is Get-There-Itis in its purest, most tragic form. The psychological pull of home overrode the logical calculation of survival. Going to Charlotte meant a hassle. It meant hotels. It meant explaining why the plane was stuck. Going to Statesville meant being done. They didn't want to be stuck in a diversion airport on December 18th. They wanted to be home. And that desire, that subconscious pressure to complete the mission, creates a tunnel vision that blinds even 20,000-hour captains to the reality of the situation. They weren't just fighting a rough engine, they were fighting the calendar. Think about the classic Swiss cheese model of accident causation. Usually, the holes don't align because we have multiple layers of defense. The pilot checks the weather, the co-pilot checks the captain, the controller checks the flight path. But in the specific context of December 2025, these layers were stripped away, one by one. The severe weather removed the visual horizon, the first layer of defense. The Get-There-Itis removed the crew resource management, or CRM. Why? Because when everyone in the cockpit is desperate to get home for the holidays, the challenge culture dies. No one speaks up to say, "Stop!" The co-pilot becomes a passenger, validating the captain's bad decision instead of questioning it. This is called social reinforcement. And finally, the layer of external oversight evaporated because of the empty tower. We often talk about the chain of events. In the Greg Biffle case, that chain was forged long before the wheels left the tarmac. It started when the holiday schedule was set. It tightened when the marginal weather was briefed, and it finally snapped the moment they decided that the risk of flying into the black void was lower than the inconvenience of sleeping in a hotel. It is a calculation that makes 0 sense on the ground, but makes perfect, deadly sense in a stressed, holiday-weary brain. But we cannot lay all the blame on the pilots. We have to talk about the system. The crash of N257BW highlights a growing crisis in American aviation: the empty tower problem. Statesville is a non-towered airport. When Greg Biffle lined up on runway 10, there was no air traffic controller to look out the window and say, "N257BW, visibility is 0. I advise holding on the ground." There was no one to verify their decision. He was alone. He was his own dispatcher, his own meteorologist, his own safety officer. In December 2025, the US air traffic control system is stretched to its breaking point. Chronic shortages of controllers mean that even in busy corridors, pilots are receiving less support than ever before. And at small regional airports, you are operating in a vacuum. If this flight had originated from a major hub like Atlanta or New York, a controller might have questioned the departure. A clearance might have been delayed due to weather hold. A second set of eyes might have broken the chain of error. But in the deadly cluster of December crashes, isolation is a key factor. Pilots making high-stakes decisions in a vacuum, pushed by holiday pressure and unsupported by an overburdened infrastructure. It is a perfect storm. An N257BW flew right into the center of it. The system relies on pilots making the right choice every time. But when the pilots are tired, stressed, and eager to get home, the safety net disappears. So, what is the verdict of the December curse? It is not a supernatural force. It is not bad luck. It is a convergence of distinct, lethal factors: unforgiving winter weather, overburdened infrastructure, and the deeply human, deeply dangerous desire to get home. We have scrutinized the Greg Biffle crash from every angle. We listened to the audio and realized it didn't tell the whole story. We dissected the inner ear and understood how the brain can betray the body. We examined the wreckage under a microscope and found a machine that was working perfectly. And finally, we looked at the map and saw a system under pressure. The conclusion is sobering. The plane was fine, the pilots were legends, but they were human, and in the unforgiving environment of aviation, being human is the biggest risk of all. If you are a pilot watching this, take this lesson with you into the cockpit. The rough engine didn't kill them, the hurry did. If the weather is bad, wait. If the airport is closed, divert. If you feel the pressure to get home, stop. Because the only thing better than getting home for Christmas is being alive to see the new year. Fly safe, make good decisions, and thank you for joining us on this investigation. This is the Air Debrief.